Okay.
bridging the sustainability gap, but the bridge is a little bit further today.
It's a little bit further today, so it's a good morning from me
Oh.
actually. I'm here in the UK in my small little hometown. But we've decided that we're gonna stay in the same house actually, Frida.
Yes, yes, I love it, and then we'll find out whether our guests also stay in the same house as well. And of course, we've been doing this on a monthly basis, doing this story around sustainability, and there's so many aspects of sustainability that we want to cover. And I just also realized that, Rianne, every time we do something, you're always almost never in Singapore,
Almost, yes, that's
right?
that's quite true. I think since we've started this, I'm, exploring sustainability, not just in Singapore and Malaysia, but also around the world. So,
Okay.
it's a global issue. And so that's why I'm, doing my bit.
So spreading the word, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
we're here today talking about World Youth Skills Day. So the global number of unemployed youths in 2022 was estimated as 73 million, and it suggested that 600 million jobs will need to be created over the next 15 years to meet youth employment needs. So the youth population will grow by more than 78 million between 2021 and 2030, and low income countries will account for nearly half of that increase. So it's clear that education and training systems need to respond to this challenge.
Absolutely. So every July 15th, the UN marks World Youth Skills Day to celebrate the strategic importance of equipping young people with skills for employment, decent work, and also entrepreneurship. Yet, also in Singapore, 1,000 youths do not progress past secondary level examinations each year, and most of them face a complex web of challenges in their personal lives. So, to share more about what is being done about this, we're joined by Naresh and Joshua Tay, who is their co-founders at Impart, which is a volunteer-driven community to enable transformative youth development. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Freda. Thanks for having us, Rian. It's lovely to
Absolutely.
be here with you. Always a pleasure to be with Naresh as well.
Right.
Fantastic.
Tada. We all live in the same house.
Yes, we're all in the
Two
same
of them.
house under the same roof. But
Mm.
I just wanted, it's very interesting when I was reading up about you guys, actually, Narash in particular, you've been given the moniker the Batman of Singapore. And I was like, okay, I need to know more about this. So can you share the reason why you've been given that nickname?
All right. Okay, this is an interesting start. I would say that this is something that the youth have been calling me because I appear to them in their point of need in the middle of the night and stuff like that during their crisis
Mm.
to help them or to save them, so to speak. And so therefore they call me Batman.
So you're really a superhero to them. That's really awesome to hear. And I guess that's like move on a little bit. So, what was your reasoning, both of you, behind getting started in social work and also co-founding Impart together?
Yeah, back then when I first met Naresh, it was more so just case management that he was doing. I think many of us know that the way education is set up, in particular in Singapore, and honestly in many other parts of the world,
Yeah.
if you're good enough, you're gonna get good help. You're going
Mm.
to get personalized resources. You're going to get people supporting you, coming alongside you in a calibrated fashion. We call that private tuition teachers and
Yes.
extracurricular activities for those with the means for it or the opportunities for it. The other thing that people don't quite know that's happening sometimes here in Singapore as well is that if you do happen to be bad enough, you can also get good help. Whatever the case might be, some of
Right.
the merits of in some sense, some of the merits of the way that the system is set up in Singapore, if you find that you are in tough enough of a situation and you get flagged up by the system, you get sent to places where Naresh used to run. That's where I first met him when he was running one of these juvenile rehabilitation centers. And in some sense, it is heartening that if you are bad enough, you get good help. What became troubling for the both of us over time as we got to know each other over the past what was it 8 9 years,
Mm.
what became troubling was that you sort of only get good help if you present yourself as bad enough. By good help, once again, we mean customized resources, people going out to meet you at your degree and point of need, whatever that might look like.
Right.
So that just sparked the thought, and we started experimenting thereafter. Freda, were you going to say something?
No, no. What you said, present yourself as bad enough.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just something that I'm trying to absorb in what you just said.
I
Okay.
mean, we do have a case in point. The
Okay.
very first youth that we really just wanted to see whether things could work out at the community level, he had been presenting himself as bad enough as far as the state apparatus was concerned. In that,
Mm,
look, whatever sort of risk factor you might have, any sort of juvenile delinquency, he had them all. He
right.
had them all,
Mm.
Okay. I'm
and
gonna. Right.
yeah.
Sorry. Go on. So on.
Oh yeah. So I'm just gonna say he was known to Naresh back in the institutional setting, but after that, when he was discharged from it, when he was left back into his community, he wanted to actually explore what it would look like to continue receiving good help, and that's when we really started trying things out together as Impart. So Naresh introduced him, and Naresh said, "I have this youth. He comes from a really complex background. Whenever he wants to study and pursue his education again, his mom will tell him, waste of time. Uh,
Wow.
all you're
Wow.
good for is going out, earning, working money, coming back. No point taking your examinations as a private candidate. You tried taking it in school, you were a complete failure at it. So waste of time. Don't bother wasting your time doing
Okay.
that. So,
Wow.
Okay.
the fact that he wanted to try again, that meant the world to us.
Right. And now I'm
So
just
yeah.
okay. I know I'm just thinking like that's those are the encouraging words from the mother. Now,
Yeah.
before I ask you the next question, I just if anybody, a couple of people here to say hello, Jaslyn, Dr. Michael here, James Fong from Penang, Audra, hi Audra, and Irhami. If you've got any questions for these gentlemen, please put them through. This you gave a very interesting story, Joshua. Now, when you talk about that, right? That's one example. What are some of the other challenges that young people face in Singapore when it comes to education and gaining skills, apart
Mhm.
from words of encouragement from their mothers?
Mhm. The entire process, just to continue on
Mm,
having this particular youth as a point of contact. I mean, some sense streamlined, very very streamlined, in the
yeah.
sense that the precise paces, the typical rhythms, when you get to this particular milestone, you know what to expect. The streamlining is great for the vast majority of people, but not so great for those who don't fit into the vast majority, and that just often happens to be those coming from your higher need and higher risk circumstances.
Mm,
So for this youth, it was just a challenge for him and for many others in his capacity to fold themselves into your group-based programs, when he has everything that's happening at home. Honestly speaking, like these words that came from his mother, they are some of the least of the worries he had to deal with on the home
Mm.
front. There were just that much more chaos that was happening at home. So to prepare and to sit for something like your national examinations as a private candidate, that required a lot. It required figuring out how people could come alongside you in a personalized capacity. It required having people be able to slow down and understand how to spur you on in this whole journey. And it required people having a sense of who you are, like in that broader, bigger picture. I know we are talking about skills. At the same time, just trying to recognize what resilience looks like on a
mm,
different front, recognizing what talent looks like expressed differently.
mm.
And Naresh, if there are any particular types of uh, aspects of skills or talents to this youth story that you want to highlight, by all means, you
Right.
feel free to chip in.
Yeah, I think another one more point that I would like to add is that a lot of students in Singapore face a lot of pressure to excel academically,
Mm,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And that in itself is leading to a lot of stress, suicidal ideation, mental health illnesses and stuff. And some of them just give up on education altogether, just because they can't do it as excellently as they hope to.
right.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's one of the struggles that we have been facing. We have been working with a lot of young people.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you really have to, as Joshua said, understand their mental health and really spur them on in a time which is, not just stressful, for anyone, but if they're having chaos at home, but stressful with examinations and all of that. I mean, it takes a lot to really be there and support them. But I mean, Impart also creates this educational experience where for, where youths facing adversity can actually thrive. So could you share more of the ways in which you're helping these youths with their education?
Yeah, gladly. At the basic level, just to continue rounding up this story and to
Mm.
continue us along, it looks like volunteers being willing to show up, having
Okay.
Mm.
volunteers coming alongside us, getting them trained, getting them more attuned to how to engage, to know how they might engage youth facing adversity. And for them, it meant being willing to explore unconventional means. In Singapore, we are so used to sanitized classrooms. For this youth, it meant trying to meet him where he was at, having sessions at void decks, having sessions at
Right.
nearby shopping malls, sometimes even going to his home when safety was well assured. It also meant having a different perspective
Mm.
on what success looks like.
Right.
So for this particular youth, we tried to get him ready for his national examinations in about 4 to 5 months.
Mm.
Most disappointing 4 to 5 months we've ever experienced. For about
Oh.
half the time, he was either late or he didn't show up. Sometimes even though we were doing all of these things to make it as accessible as we could for him. And then results day came around and he got B's and C's when he
Mm.
had failed completely the first time. And it blew our minds,
Right.
blew his mind, and it blew his mind so much that Naresh, it was only at that time that he started telling Naresh that he just didn't quite understand. He didn't quite understand why these people were showing up
Yeah,
when
the
he had never
volunteers.
met them before. He didn't quite understand
Right.
why they continued to show up even though he wasn't good enough.
Right.
All his life, if he doesn't behave, he gets punished. Here he wasn't behaving, but they were still showing up, and it blew his mind that they just believed in him even though they had nothing to gain from it. So much so that every time he knew someone was just there waiting for him, he went back home and he studied twice as long.
Wow.
Some of these things just show us the power of how these little moments of engagement, rightly framed and rightly construed, can actually change these larger narratives that youths might have of themselves, their environments, their potential. It goes a pretty long way. So having that as the first starting block, having people who are willing to adjust the mode of approach, that goes a long way.
Okay, so that's a great success story, right? That someone was just there for me. And basically you were actually acting as tuition teachers in that sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so and the fact I would love to hear, are there any more of these stories?
There are, and Naresh, feel free to jump in. But Freda, just bouncing off what you were saying,
Mm.
tuition teachers, that is sadly in some sense also the way that academic and educational skills are being construed in the vast majority of the Singaporean mind. One of the things that we realize, however, is that for many of the youths that we are supporting, especially those who are just facing significant adversities in their lives at present, they find themselves disconnected
Right.
from your schooling systems or your formal structures of care, where there are all of these other necessary bits
Right.
that make up a robust and solid education that really equips you with skills that they miss out on also. There's this whole aspirational aspect, helping these youths to recognize there's so much to the world and there are so
Mm.
many different pathways for
Yes.
contributing to the world. There's a world that you can imagine and want to live in, a safe world, a healthy world, a smart world. These are all things and conversations that we've picked up from other charity partners as well, and they helped us to realize, actually, why aren't we bringing this to our youths as well? Why aren't we helping them to realize that there are many different ways for them to contribute
Yeah.
to the world out there? And having these other, well, the other way of framing it is career aspirations,
Right.
and some sense of a vocation. Why aren't we coupling that together with what and on top of that, why aren't we helping to realize from an earlier stage that whatever financial spending habits they might see in their immediate environment, which are oftentimes suboptimal, why aren't we helping them to see that there's a better way forward? That there's
Mm.
actually a pragmatic pathway for them to attain their aspirations.
Right.
So are there ways that we can integrate all of these different components that make up a robust educational journey for these youths? I think there is, and that's sort of the pathway that we're on right now.
Right.
Beyond tuition, education.
Okay, so before Rianne goes into her next question as well, in terms of helping these youths, am I right to assume that they're also from the lower income groups, hence they don't have the help of tuition teachers and all these extra, and so that path continues? Am I right in making that statement, or if I'm
For the
wrong?
mass, for the vast majority, yeah, but there are exceptions,
Okay.
and some of them more so on the mental health care side. Naresh, not sure if you wanna
Yeah, yeah.
speak to that.
There are exceptions to that. There have been youths that are coming to us who are socially reclused,
Mm,
Mm.
not able to go out actually because of their social anxieties.
see. Oh,
They can be in a relatively good environment, but they need a different kind of care, a
right.
different mode of engagement. And we have been able to engage some of these youths in such circumstances. And the way to even engage them, it takes a lot of time
Mm,
Yeah,
before
I
you get
bet.
them
mm,
out to uh, being on the track to education or building
Mm.
skills. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4 is quality education for all. So, talking of all these different components that you've just mentioned, from your experience, what progress has been made of this, and maybe what discrepancies still remain.
yeah. And I'm just looking at this as someone living in Malaysia, right?
Mm.
It's hard to imagine anything that Singapore is lacking.
Yeah, a big part of when we think through things like even advances in technology and
Right.
all these different things, what becomes clear to all of us is that it greatly accelerates the pace
Mm,
of everything. And we see that in terms of how, like, just the vast amount of information and learning opportunities that are out there for really anyone with a smartphone. uh, Access to opportunities vastly accelerated. Ability even to pick up things through newer pedagogical elements or whatever that might be, vastly accelerated.
right.
Sadly, one of the things that economists are telling us as well, when you think about every iteration of your massive societal revolutions, whether it's your industrial revolution or anything of that sort, is that the unique thing about this whole technological revolution is that your disparity has also accelerated. Meaning
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
the gap between the haves and the have-nots, that has
Yeah.
also been accelerated. And
Yeah.
and more so when you think about how there is so much to this entire endeavor of using technology,
Right.
that can accelerate drastically in two directions.
Right.
Everyone with a smartphone knows that as much as it accelerates our access
Mm,
to meaningful engagement, it also accelerates our access to not so meaningful engagement.
true.
Um, to put it very bluntly as well, sometimes when you just see the way that children in more adverse circumstances
Mm,
learn how to interact with technology, learn how to interact with the smartphone from those around them in their immediate environments. It could be an
right.
elder sibling, it could be a parent, it could be something of that sort. That's the main mental model
Right.
with which they think about technology, as opposed to a kid who gets sent to coding class every
Right.
Saturday, for example. And then
Right.
you can very quickly think, how would these two children's lives develop in different directions, especially as they start interacting more with your digital interfaces.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's even with technology, right? I mean, it can be technology is technology, can be for the good, for the bad. So, but depending on what your, like you said, your mental model, what your influence is, you can look at technology very differently. And so I want to ask this as well. So this year's World Youth Skills Day theme is skilling teachers, trainers, and youth for a transformative future. So, continuing from what you said, how are the challenges facing young people and the skills they will need changing? We're talking about AI coming in, and all that as well, right? How do you support them as we progress?
One of the things, ironically or otherwise, that we see as more so essential skill for these young people, especially as they're growing,
Right.
is actually, interestingly enough, just the interpersonal elements that we
Mm.
think go a really, really long way. The interpersonal and the personal sort of skills that one can pick up.
Right.
Just a practical point. When you think about something like a youth's usage of their smartphones
Right.
or social media or something of that sort,
Mm,
actually one's ability to adapt and to use it in a healthy fashion or in a manner that actually aids their learning. So much of that has to do with one, interpersonal connectivity. Do they have friends with whom they can go touch grass
Mm.
with, or find some sort of a common interest outside with, or are they even in that sort of emotional safety and space where they can build healthy relationships and connections with? Otherwise, of course, they're going to be on their smartphones and social media all day. Of course, they're just going to be inhabiting a virtual world. That's one. And two, for themselves personally, when they are going through whatever sort of adversities or challenges in their lives, are they well primed enough? And are they well trained enough, or whether it's with figuring out what a healthy coping mechanism can look like? Are they well trained on those fronts to know what it would be like to respond healthily to their adversities rather than hiding away or retreating to whatever sort of virtual space as a place of refuge. So
Right.
just having some of these basic building blocks in place that sound so rudimentary, sound so 101, but
Mm.
actually so essential to navigating the challenges ahead.
Right.
That's just one of the ways.
Right.
Wow, absolutely. And yeah, it's like you said, it's, you know, you wouldn't necessarily think though that those would be the things that people need, because again, like when we were growing up, it was just 101, you know, kind of
Mm.
out there. But you know, just following on from Frida's question, is the amount of teacher training, especially in developing countries, I know you guys are based in Singapore, but maybe around the region, also keeping pace with this change?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rian. Truth be told, we aren't well qualified in that sense to speak through the state of the educational development in
Okay.
neighboring countries.
Sure,
But
no
what
worries.
we can say is that the sort of higher level challenges, we have teachers coming to us asking, are there things that can be done in the classroom at scale?
Okay.
Um, and my hunch would be simply to say that goodness, it really is something that requires a societal whole of community approach
Right.
when you're dealing with something like helping youth to learn how to engage technology or engage new devices in a meaningful fashion. So yeah, my sense is that empower the teachers, please continue doing so, but empower the teachers by figuring out how responsibility is diffused into the community and through all of us as well.
Right. So, and you, I guess what you guys are trying to do is to serve as a gap, between that.
Yeah, yeah, very
Right.
much so.
Okay. Anyone who's watching us now, who've got any questions, please feel free to put that in the chat. We'll get Joshua and Naresh to help answer that as well. So, I know you said you don't want to speak on behalf of. We know what. What do you think just needs to be done better when it comes to better education and training for students, so they may be plugged into future economic opportunities and stay nimble throughout their career. So, what else should be incorporated in the education system, so it's not just academic but other kind of skills that can help support them?
Mm-hmm. Naresh, any thoughts?
One of the things that I was thinking really about is digital literacy.
Okay.
Um, yeah, uh, because when COVID hit us and we went into digital classrooms and all, many of the young people that were in the lower SES actually didn't even have uh, a resource. And I
Okay.
think Singapore government then realized this problem and they managed to issue laptop to many of them.
Mm.
By issuing a laptop to many of them didn't really solve just the digital literacy part of things, because
Right.
some of these parents actually didn't use any learning device or any personal devices like that
Mm.
when they're working. So for them, it's even a shocking thing to be able to guide the young people, right? They were not equipped to do that. And even right now, I have a young person that is working with us who
Mm.
has some issues, even just working around his own MacBook,
Right.
like Excel sheet and all that. So I think sometimes the components of digital literacy is left out in part
Okay.
of the education process.
Right. Right.
Mm.
It's not just
And
giving you a laptop, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on, you know, you mentioned about COVID and during the pandemic, and I think a lot has really been I guess, talked about that, children really suffered because of that time, and also,
Yeah.
their skills maybe were lacking during that time because, learning was really disrupted. Is that something that you've seen in Singapore because of the pandemic?
Definitely. I mean, learning being disrupted because of the pandemic is the side effects are still felt to this day.
Mhm.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. So I've been going to certain universities, talking to professors. I've been talking to school principals from various school, and up
Mm-hmm.
to today, there are youths that are still wearing the mask. Nothing wrong with that,
Right.
but they are wearing the mask even during the physical education time when
Right.
Wow.
they're running, and they're unable to take out the mask.
Mm.
Some of them have not started to come to school
Mm.
ever since the pandemic too. So this kind of problems are still in existence to this day, right now.
Right.
So really, there's a lot of mental health issues, I guess, still in connection with the pandemic. The stress and anxiety of, if they're still wearing the mask and not feeling comfortable within the classrooms to,
Right.
to breathe and take off the mask. That's what you're saying.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So we are having that remnants, the effect of the pandemic still present, and we are trying to see how to help some of these youths to cope better.
Mm.
Right? There was a research that was done, and it seems like the youth population, is a lot more anxious now as compared to before, and a lot more
Okay.
depressed. Yeah,
Right. Okay. So this whole interpersonal, intrapersonal, understanding oneself is still something that needs to be addressed, right? In a place.
yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Thanks for that. And hi, Ron, who's in Greece. Thanks for joining us. And again, anyone, if you have any questions before we let these two gentlemen go, do let us know. Rianne.
Yes. Okay. Well, what are the ways that people can actually get involved with Impart in Singapore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Some of the immediate ways we would just love to have you learn more about us, get to know us. We are www.impart.sg. And we're happy to take conversations off from there. Honestly, we're the sort of organization, we are the sort of charity that seeks to find alignment in the things that we are doing. We love the surge of passion and energy that comes from people who like to volunteer. Even
Right.
more so, we love it when we can find alignment as we are directing our
Okay.
focus to
Okay.
various things.
Just before, I know you say alignment. Like, for example, what has been a great alignment, and then so in what way can people support?
Oh yeah, I mean on one front, it's people who are keen on thinking about how children and youth are being supported through their development.
Okay.
Having a clear sense of what that might look like.
Right.
Go through our website, look at our stories, get a sense of what we are like there.
Okay.
And that aside, we have also really benefited quite a bit, increasingly so, from professionals who have specific skill sets. Who
Mm-hmm.
would love to think about how that can be applied beyond their immediate sphere. We've had wonderful support from volunteers who come alongside us, lending their IT skills to help
Okay.
build little things here and there. We've had volunteers who come bringing professional experience on
Mm.
particular domains like communications and marketing, or things like even professional development and coaching. We've
Okay.
enjoyed supporting and working together with volunteers on these various fronts also.
So
Right.
if someone is listening and they've like, oh, that's something I could definitely be, volunteer with. I mean, what are the requirements for volunteers? Is there a certain amount of time that they have to, give up, or, just tell us a little bit more about that.
Because Rianne wants to volunteer.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I'm keen.
see the point. Well, for those who are engaging directly with our youth, we do put up certain stringent requirements for
Yeah.
both the volunteer and the youth safety. And typically that looks like a 6-month commitment to a
Okay.
year for starters, and it goes through with a range of training details also. But for those with more ad hoc skills, professional skill sets that can be applied on an ad hoc basis, it's calibrated, it's personalized. We'll figure it
Okay.
out with you.
Right.
But I guess it works both ways because the youths are learning skills, but also your volunteers are learning new skills as
Yeah,
well.
Mm.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. It's both ways in Impart, right? So we also call ourselves I'm part. I'm part of
Ah.
the community. Yes. So both
Amazing.
Okay.
ways.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Narash and Joshua, co-founders at Impart, to sharing more about World Youth Skills Day. Excuse me,
Imparting their knowledge and their
exactly, imparting
skills.
their knowledge. And yes, it was really wonderful to hear, as Frida said, more about what you do and the wonderful work that you're doing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
And
everyone.
thank
For having us. Yeah.
and thank you everyone for joining as well. Of course, you've been
Yes,
watching Causeway Conversations, bridging the sustainability gap with me, Phil, and
me, Rianne Lovell Boland.
bye.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.